Let me ask you something uncomfortable. If I took 30% of your income starting today, would you notice immediately, or would it take months? Because for most people, that money is already gone. It's not been stolen, it's not been taxed away, and it hasn't been lost in some bad investment. It's disappearing quietly into car payments, upgrades, subscriptions, convenience, and those small lifestyle improvements that feel harmless but compound into something massive. And here's the shocking part. The problem isn't that you don't make enough money. It's that your lifestyle is growing faster than your wealth. Today I'm going to show you why 30% of your income is quietly working against you. How rich thinking and broke thinking separate at this exact point, and how redirecting that same money can buy you something far more valuable than a nicer car. It can buy you your freedom. Let me tell you something most people never notice until it's too late. You don't lose wealth in some dramatic fashion. You don't wake up one morning and suddenly misplace 30% of your income. It doesn't disappear in a single bad investment or one catastrophic mistake. It slips away quietly, comfortably, and politely. It leaves in small, respectable payments. A car that costs $550 a month. 3 streaming subscriptions you barely use. Food delivery 4 times a week because you're too busy. Upgrading your phone when the old one works just fine. Adding a few luxury touches to your lifestyle each time your income rises. None of these feel reckless, and that's precisely the danger. When people think about why they aren't building wealth, they blame things like taxes, inflation, the economy, or their salary. And those things definitely matter, of course. But what I've seen over and over again is that the biggest leak isn't external, it's behavioral. It's the silent expansion of your lifestyle. When your income rises by 10%, your spending rises by 12%. When your income doubles, your expenses somehow follow close behind. And the person earning $100,000 often feels just as financially stretched as the person who was earning $50,000 once did. That's not bad luck. That's drift. You see, money has a way of seeking comfort. When you make more, you feel entitled to improve your surroundings, a nicer apartment, a newer car, more convenience, better restaurants. And individually, each of these choices feels justified. You worked hard for it. You earned it. Why not enjoy it? The problem isn't the enjoyment. The problem is the permanence of these decisions. Most lifestyle upgrades aren't one-time choices. They are recurring commitments. That's $600. Car payment, isn't just $600. It has $600 every single month for 5 or 6 years. That's over $36,000 gone before you've even considered insurance, maintenance, and depreciation. And unlike a good business or a productive asset, that car will likely be worth far less at the end of its life than what you paid for it. The same goes for housing. Stretching just a little for the nicer place. It's only $400 more a month, you tell yourself, but that's $4,800 a year. What truly fascinates me is how invisible this financial drain becomes. Nobody feels like they are wasting 30% of their income. They feel like they're living reasonably. They compare themselves to their neighbors, their coworkers, their friends on social media, and relative to those comparisons, they may even feel like they're being modest. But wealth is not built by comparison. It's built by margin. If you consistently consume nearly everything you earn, you eliminate the most powerful force in all of finance. Time working on retained capital. Money that isn't saved cannot compound, and compounding doesn't require brilliance. It requires ownership of assets and the patience to let them grow. Let's make this practical. Suppose someone earns $5,000 per month after taxes. If 30% of that quietly disappears into lifestyle expansion, that's $1,500. We're not talking about groceries, basic shelter, or utilities. We're talking about lifestyle upgrades. That's $18,000 a year. Invested at a reasonable long-term return, that sum alone could grow into hundreds of thousands of dollars over a couple of decades. Instead, it gets consumed. And consumption is a one-way street. It feels good in the moment, but it rarely feels meaningful years later. Now, I'm not suggesting that anyone live miserably. I'm suggesting you practice awareness. The person who controls their fixed costs controls their future. The person who keeps their lifestyle slightly below their income builds resilience. When unexpected events occur, they always do. The disciplined household survives calmly while others panic. What most people label as normal living is often simply unexamined spending. A gym membership that goes unused. A luxury car that impresses strangers but stresses out its owner. Daily conveniences that trade long-term security for short-term comfort. Individually, they seem harmless. Collectively, they are incredibly expensive. There's a quiet principle I've observed. The difference between financial stress and financial freedom often sits inside your fixed monthly obligations. When your required expenses are high, your options are low. But when your required expenses are modest, your options multiply. Flexibility is wealth. Obligation is fragility. And the irony is this: many of the purchases that absorb that 30% of your income significantly increase your happiness after the initial excitement fades. Humans adapt very quickly. The new car becomes normal. The upgraded apartment becomes standard. The subscription services just blend into the background noise. But the financial burden remains, month after month. It's not dramatic, it's incremental. And that's precisely why it's so dangerous. If you want to understand where your future is going, don't look at your salary. Look at your recurring commitments. They tell the real story. You cannot build extraordinary financial outcomes on ordinary discipline if your lifestyle expands at the same speed as your income. The first and most important rule of building wealth isn't earning more. It's keeping a gap between what you earn and what you require to live. That gap is your oxygen. Without it, there is no compounding, no investing, no cushion, no leverage when an opportunity appears. So take a hard look at where your money is going. Not with judgment, but with curiosity. Track your spending for a month and identify those silent, recurring costs. Ask yourself, is this purchase buying me lasting happiness, or is it just buying me a short-term comfort at the expense of long-term freedom? The answers might surprise you, and they might just be the key that unlocks your financial future. Thanks for watching. If this video gave you a new perspective, consider subscribing for more content on building real, lasting wealth. See you next time. If you want real control over your future, you have to protect your financial margin before you protect your lifestyle. Have you ever noticed how a significant chunk of your money, maybe 30%, just quietly disappears? The real question isn't just where it goes, but why it happens so consistently. The answer isn't about math. It's about your mindset. Over the years, I've seen that the difference between people who build wealth and those who stay stuck rarely starts with how much they earn. It starts with how they see a dollar. One person gets $1,000 and immediately asks, "What can this buy me?" Another person gets the same $1,000 and asks, "What can this become?" That single shift changes everything. The consumer mindset isn't about being unintelligent. It's about urgency. It says, "I work hard. I deserve some comfort right now." It looks for validation in things you can see, like a better car, designer clothes, or the latest phone. It spends money to signal that things are going well. The wealth mindset, on the other hand, delays that signal. It asks a quieter, more powerful question. Will this purchase increase my options 5 years from now, or will it reduce them? That's the real dividing line. Let's think about a simple $1,000 decision. Many of us spend that amount several times a year without a second thought, maybe a vacation on a credit card, new furniture, or a fun weekend. None of these are bad things on their own. But here's the key, is that $1,000 being consumed, or is it being positioned? If you invest that money, even with a modest return, it doesn't just stay $1,000. Over decades, it compounds, it multiplies. More importantly, it starts working for you, separate from your own labor. You sleep, it grows. You work, it grows. You take a vacation, it still grows. Consumption needs to be repeated over and over. Investment just needs patience. Let's compare two people, both earning $70,000 a year. The first person finances a $45,000 car with a $750 monthly payment. The second person buys a reliable used car for cash and invests the difference, let's say $600 a month. After 5 years, the first person owns an asset that's worth a fraction of what they paid for it. The second person has invested roughly $36,000, not even counting the growth. With compounding, that could easily be over $40,000. Same income, same starting point, but a radically different outcome. The consumer mindset asks, can I afford the monthly payment? The wealth mindset asks, what is this payment preventing me from doing? This is opportunity cost, the silent partner in every financial choice. When you spend money, you're not just giving up the cash. You're giving up everything the cash could have become. I've always believed that money should work like an employee. Every dollar you keep should have a job. Some dollars are for maintaining your life, but others should be for expanding it. If all your money is busy just keeping up with your present, none is left to build your future. This is why recurring expenses are so dangerous. They trap you in maintenance mode, forcing you to work just to stay even. Wealth thinking breaks that cycle. Instead of upgrading your lifestyle with every pay raise, the wealth-oriented person upgrades their ownership. They buy assets that produce income. They acquire shares in productive companies. They reinvest their dividends. They let time amplify their discipline. And here's a subtle but critical point. Building wealth is usually invisible. It doesn't look flashy. No one compliments you for driving a sensible car or for quietly automating your investments. But that invisibility is a sign of strength. The consumer mindset wants visible proof of success. The wealth mindset builds structural strength. Let's be real, we're all wired for short-term rewards. A new purchase gives you a rush of excitement, but compounding offers no dopamine hit. It's slow, it's uneventful. Honestly, it can be boring. And yet, boring is often where the profit is. The person who resists upgrading their lifestyle for just 5 or 10 years builds something far more powerful than status. They build options. They build the ability to say no to a job they dislike, to handle emergencies calmly, and to invest when markets are down and others are forced to sell. Freedom doesn't come from earning more. It comes from needing less. I've seen high earners living paycheck to paycheck because their expenses grew with their income, and I've seen people with moderate incomes quietly build huge portfolios because they protected the gap between what they earned and what they spent. The difference wasn't luck. It was philosophy. The consumer mindset asks, how much can I borrow? The wealth mindset asks, how much can I own? One focuses on lifestyle, the other focuses on leverage. And true leverage isn't about debt, it's about time. Every dollar you invest becomes a tiny engine that works for you, year after year. Over time, those engines form a powerful system that will always outperform pure effort. You don't need extraordinary luck, you need consistency, patience, and the humility to avoid buying things that look impressive but produce nothing. The irony is that real wealth often arrives quietly. It grows in statements no one else sees, while others are distracted by the next shiny object. The gap between the two mindsets widens slowly at first, and then all at once. Two people start at the same place. One chooses consumption, the other chooses production. 5 years later, the difference is noticeable. 10 years later, it's dramatic. 20 years later, it can change a family's future for generations. And it all started with one question, not, can I afford this? But, what will this cost me in future freedom? Choose wisely. Thanks for watching. And once it does, the gap becomes impossible to ignore. Choose ownership over optics. There's a particular kind of spending that concerns me more than careless spending. Careless spending at least announces itself. You feel it, you recognize it. It has a tinge of guilt attached to it. But the most dangerous spending feels responsible. It feels like progress. You get a raise, and you move to a better neighborhood. You receive a bonus, and you upgrade the car. Your business grows, and you decide it's time for the larger home. Each step appears logical. In fact, society applauds it. Friends congratulate you. Family sees it as proof that you're moving forward. And yet, beneath the surface, something subtle begins to shift. Your fixed expenses rise. Your required monthly number increases. Your margin shrinks. This is the lifestyle trap. It disguises itself as success. I have observed that as income rises 20%, spending often rises 25% or 30%. Not because people are irresponsible, but because they recalibrate what normal feels like. The old apartment becomes too small. The reliable car becomes outdated. The simple vacation becomes basic. Humans adapt quickly. What once felt like luxury soon feels like baseline. And once that baseline shifts upward, it rarely comes back down. The danger isn't in earning more. Earning more is wonderful. The danger is attaching permanent obligations to temporary increases in income. Let's say someone moves from earning $60,000 to $100,000 per year. On paper, that's transformative. But if housing costs double, the car payment doubles, dining expenses double, and subscription comforts multiply, they may find themselves with little additional breathing room. The number on the paycheck changes, the financial pressure remains. Now here's where it becomes particularly tricky. Many of these upgrades are socially reinforced. Driving a nicer car signals that you're doing well. Living in a larger home signals progress. Wearing higher-end brands suggests arrival. But wealth is not measured by signals. It is measured by surplus. If your lifestyle expands to match your income exactly, you have gained status without gaining strength. And status without strength is fragile. I have seen individuals earning well into six figures who cannot withstand a few months of interruption. A job loss, a market downturn, a health issue, suddenly the entire structure feels unstable. Not because they lack earning power, but because their lifestyle requires continuous performance. That's not freedom. That's dependency at a higher income bracket. The irony is that the early years of someone's career often contain their greatest opportunity for wealth building. When expenses are modest and expectations are flexible, the gap between income and spending can be substantial. But as lifestyle solidifies, mortgage, vehicles, schools, memberships, flexibility disappears. And flexibility is everything. Let your assets grow faster than your appetite. Now once you've identified the silent drain, once you understand the mindset difference, and once you recognize the lifestyle trap, the natural question becomes simple. What do you actually do about it? Awareness without action doesn't change outcomes. Discipline does. The solution is not dramatic, it's not complicated, and it doesn't require extraordinary intelligence. It requires structure. I've always believed that before you allow money to pass through your hands, you must decide where it is going. If you don't assign it a job, it will volunteer for consumption. And consumption is very persuasive. So here is a simple framework. Before you upgrade your lifestyle, upgrade your ownership. When income arrives, a portion should immediately be directed toward assets before you see it, before you feel tempted to spend it, not what's left over. The first allocation, let's say you earn $5,000 this month. If you wait until the end to see what remains, you'll find very little. But if you commit, from the beginning, to investing 20% $1,000, then you are building strength before comfort. That 20% is not a sacrifice, it is a seed. Over time, seeds become trees, and trees produce fruit without further effort. Compounding is not exciting day to day. It is slow, uneventful. Sometimes it even feels disappointing in the early years. But what makes it powerful is consistency. A dollar invested today has decades to multiply. A dollar spent today has one brief moment of utility. The earlier you redirect that 30% of unnecessary spending into productive assets, the more dramatic the difference becomes. Now, before aggressive investing, there is something practical that must exist: stability. A modest emergency reserve. Even $1,000 set aside changes behavior. It prevents minor setbacks from becoming major disruptions. It reduces the temptation to rely on debt. It creates calm. Calm investors make better decisions. Without a cushion, every unexpected expense feels catastrophic. With a cushion, it feels manageable. That emotional difference is critical. Financial success is as much psychological as mathematical. Then there is another habit I find remarkably powerful: delay. When you feel the impulse to make a significant purchase, give it 72 hours. No credit card swipe, no immediate transfer. Just time. Time removes emotion from decisions. Many purchases that feel urgent on Monday feel unnecessary by Thursday. And if, after waiting, the purchase still makes sense and fits comfortably within your structure, you proceed with clarity rather than impulse. Most financial mistakes are emotional. Few are analytical. You also must learn to ask a better question. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" ask, "Will this matter in 5 years?" That single question filters out an astonishing amount of waste. The majority of expensive purchases lose relevance quickly. The excitement fades, the novelty disappears. But the capital, had it been invested, would still be working. Imagine redirecting just $800 per month from lifestyle upgrades into productive investments. That's $9,600 per year. Over 10 years, without even assuming extraordinary returns, that's nearly $100,000 contributed. With compounding at a reasonable rate, it could be significantly more. And here is the extraordinary part: that capital begins to generate income of its own. Dividends, growth, appreciation. It becomes self-reinforcing. At some point, your investments start covering small expenses. Later, they may cover larger ones. Eventually, they may cover your living costs entirely. That is when the structure flips. Instead of working to support your lifestyle, your assets support it. But that outcome requires patience. It requires ignoring social pressure. It requires contentment with progress that isn't visible. Many people attempt shortcuts. They seek higher-risk speculation. They chase trends. They hope for sudden breakthroughs. But lasting wealth rarely arrives dramatically. It accumulates steadily. If you consistently invest 20% of your income, avoid permanent lifestyle inflation, maintain liquidity for emergencies, and delay major purchases until they are rational rather than emotional, you create a system that works regardless of short-term volatility. Systems outperform bursts of motivation. And here's something important. This isn't about restriction. It's about prioritization. You can still enjoy your income. You can still upgrade thoughtfully. But those upgrades should follow asset growth, not precede it. When your investments generate meaningful returns, upgrading your lifestyle doesn't weaken you, it reflects strength. The difference is sequence. Build the engine first, enjoy the ride later. The 30% that once disappeared quietly can become the foundation of long-term independence. It can reduce anxiety, it can expand opportunity. It can give you choices that most people never experience. And choice is the ultimate luxury. Not the car, not the house, not the visible markers of success. Choice, the ability to walk away from something that doesn't serve you, the ability to pursue work you find meaningful, the ability to weather downturns without panic, the ability to help others without destabilizing yourself. That kind of freedom doesn't come from earning more and spending more. It comes from redirecting what would have been consumed into something productive and letting time do its work. It may not feel dramatic in year 1. It may not look impressive in year 3. But by year 10, the results compound in ways that seem almost unfair to those who never started. You don't need perfection, you need consistency. Protect your margin, automate your investing. Delay your impulses. Build assets first. Let compounding work quietly. And over time, the 30% you once wasted will become the engine that buys your freedom. Pay yourself before you upgrade your life. If this message challenged you even a little, don't let it end here. Tonight, open your bank statement. Circle 1, recurring expense that doesn't build your future. Just 1, cancel it or redirect it. Then automate that amount into an investment account before the week ends. Don't wait for motivation. Build the structure. If you found value in this, subscribe and share this with someone who earns well but still feels financially stuck. The more people who understand this 30% rule, the fewer people will trade their freedom for upgrades they won't remember in 5 years. Start building assets before you build appearances.